Okay, so Rita, hi, how are you?
Hi. Good. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm really excited to get to speak to you. I was checking out your website again just a little while ago, and I had some questions for you straight away. So let's get into it right off the bat. Tell me what a canine herbalist is.
Well, it's you know, depending on who you are, I definitely am a canine herbalist who specifically works with dogs. I do dabble in a little kitties and humans, but usually it's my already kind of I've already worked with their dog. But I do consulting. I help people with herbal protocols to support their dog's health, and I do some formulating for companies. I've been doing this a long time, like more than 2 decades. So in some capacity or another. And I do a lot of formulation. I'm an author. I do a lot of writing, consulting with like different veterinarians and people in the field, in the veterinary field. I'm a member of the Veterinary Botanical Medical Association, a non-veterinary member, which I'm super proud of. And uh, it's a variety, but I certainly have a good time and help a lot of dogs and people, which is my main concern for all of it.
That's amazing. That's like quite the resume right there. It's definitely a lot of. I was reading the different, the different people that you've, consulted with, and I was like, wow, and just the time of doing it, and I kind of feel like things are kind of coming back around more in the forefront with using more herbs and that type of thing and treatment in our animals. So,
Yes.
um, and I did want to talk to you also about so you've been doing it for over 20 years. So, but like, how did you like get into it? Like, how were you like, oh, I think I'm going to become,
Well,
you
the
know,
my dad and my grandmother are definite. I definitely in my blood. My grandmother, was a mother of 16 in the Great Depression.
wow,
Uh, People used herbs. Poor people definitely
absolutely.
used herbs then, and she used herbs for all of her kids. Never went to the doctor at all. Had a midwife to help her with birth, and that's it. So
Hmm.
and then my dad. I didn't know my grandmother very well. My mom has just a lot of stories about her, and I met her a couple times, but she was very elderly at the time, and my dad and I would garden together, and he would send me out to get certain plants in the field, and he wouldn't consider himself an herbalist, but he definitely instilled that plants are useful, and the importance of homegrown vegetables. Um,
Yes.
and he also grew a lot of herbs in his garden.
Hmm.
Um, and then, I studied Ayurveda when I was in my middle 20s, uh, when I went to the University of Minnesota. And then it didn't resonate with me. And I ended up moving to Tennessee, and I bought a 36-acre property
Oh,
there. And I really started falling in love with the plants that I grew up with. And they were
hmm.
all over the property. And I started boarding dogs, doing kennel free boarding and training. And I just noticed how sick the dogs were. And I had started working with some of the plants there and kind of getting into herbalism. And then I decided that, hey, how would I use herbalism for dogs while I'm
Right.
learning here? And I started making salves and candles and different like external remedies for dogs. And I started a pug rescue there, and I used with another woman, I used herbs on them a lot, along with under a veterinarian's Dr. Kevin Brunt helped me a lot with all the pugs, and it just kind of went from there. And then someone asked me a couple years in, you know, um, what are you? And I thought, well, I'm a canine herbalist. So, and then now I knew there were animal herbalists out there. The people that influenced my work early on, uh, the internet was not the internet of today. You couldn't buy anything on the internet. Like people were just starting to make like websites for their
Right.
businesses on the internet,
Right.
right?
Exactly. I remember making my website in the beginning. back in the Stone Age of making websites. Yes.
right? You know, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it was the Stone Age. It was like 2002, and
Hmm.
and it just kind of went from there. I was like, well, yeah, I'm an herb. Like I think it was right around 2005 or six that I just said, yeah, I'm gonna do this herb thing with dogs, and I maybe 2004, and and it just kind of went from there. And then for the last, I would say, heavy duty, the last 10 years have been heavy duty, um, hardcore herbal, like practice herbalism formulation. And before that, um, I would say 2010, um, was the kind of lead up there. I had a external product for dogs company called Farm Dog Naturals with this other brilliant woman, and we had this company, and I just I formulated everything for that company, and so in one capacity or another, it's just been great. And I've been doing consulting since pretty much like the first week of my kennel free boarding facility.
I love it. Love it.
Yeah.
So basically you're like handcrafting the salves, like when you first started and you were dabbling a little bit and having your pug rescue, and I kind of feel like maybe you were treating skin issues with the wrinkles on them,
Yes,
the
yes.
hot
I was
spots
treating
maybe
all the
even.
yes, all the skin issues and stuff. And then I started, giving the pugs, the rescue pugs herbs. I'd give some herbs to the people that were fostering them or some already made formulas out there. And then it kind of went into tinctures and extracts and infusions and all that stuff. And um uh the rest is history.
Yeah,
And now I use internal and external remedies for dogs and for all facets of things.
nice. And are you still cultivating, or has it gotten to a point where you're like, okay, I need
No.
to
um
manufacture? And if that's true, are you still like low key cultivating and manufacturing like for your guys at home type of thing? Like you have a
so
greenhouse?
yes, so I have a business called Canine Herbalist,
Mm-hmm.
and it's canineherbalist.com, and I sell a lot of my flower essences and tinctures and extracts there. I also sell some other companies products that I like. But I grow a lot of my own herbs right now, and um I make a lot of my own medicine. I do what's called wild crafting too, which you go
Sure.
out in the wild and get a little bit of each, of what you can. You don't need a ton of medicine unless you're doing dried plants, which I don't do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Unless you're, selling dried powders, you don't need a lot of plants to make good plant medicine. Um, Next year I am going to have some dried plants, but I'm working with a farm to, a bigger farm to help me bring in some of those.
Nice. Nice. And okay, let's see. Let me see. You touched a little bit about how, you're kind of is it complementary to like the pharmaceuticals that say a client, may have the vet is prescribing, a certain medication protocol for like, let's just say cancer, or something to that effect. Is that something that you can like kind of work in conjunction with that?
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
So, and it depends on the plant, right? So
Right,
it
right.
depends on the plant. So if someone was giving like was being given an NSAID, there's some plants out there like willow that don't work well with those, or someone has a uh like vetmedin, which is for the heart. If they're on a heart medicine, then I have to be careful of what I'm using, and that just comes with knowledge, which I happen to have, which is good, but takes
Yes.
practice. um
Yes.
and then there's good references out there for like pharmaceutical interaction now, so that's good. But yeah, you have to be careful. But yes, most animals can be helped, but some pharmaceuticals you can't use anything with. But
Right.
it's usually not the case. There are certain cases that I don't like.
Oh, break it up just a little bit. It'll catch up.
Oh, okay, hold on. Am
Give
I
it a sec.
there?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
got
So
5 bars, so um
yeah, we do too. This is bad weather here. So you were saying that certain medications you can't do anything with, but that's rare.
Yeah, it is rare. And then there's certain ailments that I don't deal with. I don't deal with uh diabetes. I
Okay.
don't deal with congested heart failure.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know with specific diseases per se. Like if a dog has arthritis, I'm going to help balance out the musculoskeletal system. Uh,
Mhm.
if you're I'm going to try to get of ear infection is happening in the first place.
Say that again about the ear infection.
Well, I'm going to try to get to the bottom of what is happening. That's
Yeah.
usually what herbalism does. We're trying to figure out the root cause of what's going on.
Mhm. And it sounds like just that holistic view where like you're looking at the whole animal, the whole dog, and then you're also looking at, what they're taking pharmaceutically. I kind of suspect you probably would look at what their diet is like, maybe,
Yes.
and what their
Yes.
like their living environment, their exercise, outside allergies, what have you, type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to look at the whole entire dog as an ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes what an ecosystem it is, for sure. Yeah. Do you work with like behavior issues like either separation anxiety or like some type of fear or
Yes.
aggression? Do you do
All the
that?
time. All day
Mhm.
long. Yes. And
All
uh
day long,
yeah,
yes.
all day long. It definitely, I was just on another podcast talking, right, and how synthetic copper that's added is really causing a lot of problems with organ levels of copper and blood levels of copper.
Mhm.
And, I was discussing like excess copper can cause horrible fear, anxiety, and panic disorders. It is definitely one of the things that I go to. Chlorine levels um, and copper levels are a huge contributor to fear-based reactivity and panic and fright. And so don't together with dogs who are afraid and reactive to kidney health. Usually they think their dog's kidneys are totally healthy as long as they're not showing up on blood work, right?
Right.
As gone awry. But that's not necessarily true. 9 times out of 10, when a dog comes to me, I really want to work on my dog's reactivity, or he's afraid of everything. He's hiding people during storms and he's afraid of people. He's submissively peeing, things like that.
Mhm.
I kidneys and look
Mhm.
at the diet, and usually I don't have to do anything about the behavior because it goes away. Um,
Right.
or the microbiome, like a dog's large intestine
Mhm.
carries almost 80 to 80 over 80% of their immune system. It
Mhm.
affects the gut brain axis. Is how the gut in the large intestine, all the bacteria, the trillions and trillions of bacteria in there really affect a dog's emotional center and how they're reacting and being in the
Yes.
world. So there's just so much and so much fun and so much in kind of enlightening information, both from me learning things nonstop and
Mhm.
kind of putting it through my filter and
Yeah.
giving to people. Right? I have a I have a I have been told that I have a good way of taking really difficult concepts, breaking them down, and getting people to understand them pretty easily. So that's my goal really, is to help people understand some of these bigger concepts and what they can do to help their dogs um, get better and be more conducive for training. You know,
Yes.
when I had that kennel free boarding facility in Tennessee, I used to have a food requirement, right? And people said, "You're never going to get anyone to board with you." I was an hour outside of Nashville. They had to drive there. I required an interview, and when I would get them to my facility, I would just sit them down and I would ask them, what are you feeding? And for me, there's a kibble hierarchy. We got, your bottom of the old Roy, types
Yes.
of that a boy and those things.
Yes.
And then you got your
Oh, I was
pedigree and
just
you got your
talking
science
about it.
diet and
Hmm.
everything. And I would explain to them, okay, so here's a list of 20 kibbles. Here's a store. There was this lovely store in Nashville. There wasn't that many, but there was a lovely store. I said, this store is pretty central. And here's one in this area. Here's one in this area. But here's are some stores that you can purchase some of these kibbles at. Your
Yes.
dog has to be on this, anything that's on this list. And this is the reason why. And then I would tell them, you know, your dog is super hyperactive. Uh, he's very needy and it's not his fault. Okay. I said, you know, it's kind of like shooting him in the foot and then asking him to climb this big mountain that was behind us. I said, he can't help it. Like
Right.
he's just overrun with sugar, just overrun with carbohydrates and sugar, 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 and and hyperactive and like food colorings and just all that stuff. They're neurotoxins and they just hyper excite the nervous system. And they would be like, they'd give me that look, but they really wanted to board their dog with me because I was the only game in town in kennel free boarding. And it was on it was beautiful. It was a beautiful farm. We had such a lovely, lovely piece of property.
Wonderful.
And the dogs got to be dogs and they were safe and it was just so much fun. Um, and then they would come back. I'd be like, we're going to try it again in 3 months.
Yeah.
Sometimes a month, depending on how poor the behavior was and how poor the food was. And I just told them what to expect. There's going to be a little detoxing. You know, it's going to take a little minute to get on this food. I said, come back in 90 days and we'll give it another try. And I would always see the people back. They would be like, oh my God, I can't believe the difference in my dog's attitude. I can't believe the difference in their behavior. And this is still on kibble. And I can't believe the difference in their behavior and their bodies looked better. They were shedding less. Their poop didn't stink as much. The whole thing, their eyes were brighter. It's
Right.
just that they didn't have as many toxins in their system.
Right. There's less discharge coming out of their eyes. There's less of that hyperactivity. Yeah. I know, like, from a training standpoint and a dog behavior standpoint, it's like when I would get, especially aggression cases, just like, let's look at the food, let's look at the protein levels, go to the vet, get blood work, dive deep, looking at the entire thing. And yeah, and I laughed about Old Roy because I'm editing tomorrow's episode, and it's a fear-free groomer, and we literally just talked about Old Roy. And so in the end,
Yeah.
I was like, that's why I was laughing, because that is the worst of the worst, right? How I don't know how you feel about some of these, supposedly higher end kibbles that we know we were spending lots of money doing, buying and giving to the dogs, and such. And then I was like, you know what? Fillers are fillers. They're just using different kinds of fillers. So I
Well,
went back.
you can't make a kibble without a filler. So,
Right,
that's
right.
what makes it kibble. But
Exactly. Got to
I
hold
do
it
think for
together.
people, yeah, I mean, I do think for people out there that don't have, but in my opinion, I think some of the kibbles are super expensive. And if you know
That's
what you're doing, you can
what I
do a
mean.
fresh food diet. But if you want the convenience of the kibble, like I have on my upcoming books website, I have a source. I have like sourcing, and I do
Mhm.
have some kibbles that I picked out that if you're going to feed kibble, pick one of these. But
Right.
there is a kibble hierarchy. There's a big
Yeah,
difference between
absolutely.
like limited ingredient wellness to that a boy or attaboy or Old Roy, right? Or
Right.
pedigree or science
Right.
diet, all
Right.
of them, right?
Hmm.
Um, we don't want any wheat, we don't want any soy, we don't want any corn gluten meal, we don't want and
Right.
those rendered meal or just suspect animal fat. Hello. And so like there's also, there's euthanized cats and dogs in many kibble brands. So we
That's
want to
right.
make sure that they're kibbles that don't use rendered meal, right?
Mhm.
We don't
Right.
want rendered meal. So um those are the kibbles that I'm going to recommend for people that we're having that kibble conversation. However, a lot of people don't realize they need to give digestive enzymes when they give kibble because the
Correct.
food is dead. Just like cooked food needs digestive enzymes added to it. And enzymes can really help vitality, assimilation of nutrients. It can, help the liver. It just, there's so many enzymes that are needed to break down that kibble. And so it does help. But I do think that if they can get on a limited ingredient kibble and then, or maybe like on the Honest Kitchen clusters, right? There's these clusters. They're downgraded, they're a downgraded kibble or an upgraded kibble, right? And then they do that, well, they might switch to their their like freeze dried food or dehydrated food. I think it's
Yeah.
dehydrated food. And then, well, that, it's the baby steps, right? And it just might to get their little paws wet in that they might be more conducive to switching over to a minimally processed diet. And that's where I want people to go.